Welcome back to Live What You Love. Today we're going to be covering top tips to help you improve. Okay, the first tip that we're going to talk about is if the target is directly to my left, I want my sternum and the tips of my toes to point directly straight ahead. So you want 90 degrees offset from wherever you're aiming. That will allow you to get sufficient back tension and also align kind of your elbow, forearm, hand through that bow to become one with that arrow. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is having consistent anchor points. This one's very important. So I like 2 anchor points. The first is taking this first knuckle right here, and I put that right behind my jaw when I'm at full draw. My second anchor point is by using the string. I like to put the string on the side of my nose. Some people like the tip of your nose. Try out both, whichever works for you. Just do that in the future, but make sure to do the same thing going forwards. Don't like switch side to tip, side to tip. So the next tip is to make your trigger a hair release so that it doesn't require as much force for you to put on the trigger to make the release mechanism actually release. So there's 2 screws that are adjustable on here. One has to do with the distance that this lever travels, or like the actual trigger travels before the release mechanism will release, and the next has to do with how much force is required to actually move the trigger. So I like to lighten up both of those, make my stroke length very short, and then also make the amount of force required to cause that trigger to move very low. So I like a hair trigger. Now this next one I actually got from one of you guys. It's called the 6 to 9 shooting position. So the alignment of your peep and your sight housing is not always super easy. You pull it back, and the idea is to keep the circular peep sight kind of centered in the middle of your sight housing. And you know how much that can wobble around. But whenever I'm anchored in, I tend to have the peep kind of rest in the lower left-hand corner of the sight housing's circular outer frame. So that's called the 6-9 position. And for me, it's easier than just kind of bouncing it around in the middle. The next tip, I struggle with this still, and I have to remind myself to do this one. Whenever you draw completely back, you need to relax, like not just kind of relax, really relax your front hand. So I'm going to draw back, and I'll keep my hand kind of right. Let me show you what works for me. So you draw back, and then when you're drawn, I always draw back like this, and then when I get drawn, I put my fingertips just very lightly on the front of the riser, just like that, just very lightly. That one really helps with my consistency. That was something I struggled with for a while. And Anthony Forfair, thank you for the tip, man. Next tip is breathing. So when you draw back, depending on your draw weight, it could be really easy, really hard. It shouldn't be that hard for you if you have your draw weight set properly. But you draw back, and you're at full draw, right? And you're sitting there holding it, and you're trying to get that pin steady, but it's kind of wobbling, and you're holding your breath. That is the worst thing you can do. You want to breathe the entire time while that pin is kind of steadying out. So it's going to be moving. It'll move a little less, but that whole time you're still breathing. And then right before I get ready to kind of shoot, I'll just start breathing a little more slowly. So I'm not like, it's controlled. You won't even really notice if you're watching my chest, you won't really notice it go. It's subtle. It's just. The big one there is just control your breathing. Don't stop breathing when you're drawing back. It's only going to cause you to kind of panic and cause the target panic overall to go up, which we all know sucks. This is one that I haven't really seen a whole lot of people talk about, but it's something that I do because I used to struggle quite heavily with target panic. I would start to get over that pin, and it was like as soon as my pin would be on the target, it's like my head was ready for that impact from the bow. What I like to do to get myself used to having the pin on the target without it releasing is literally do just that. When you're at full draw, hold your pin on that on your target, like exactly where it needs to be when you would feel comfortable firing, but don't fire, and just hold it there. And just do that for like 20 seconds, let it down, do it again, 20 seconds, let it down. I normally do about 5 reps. But I don't do that every day or anything. It's just if I'm starting to feel target panic, and if I feel like my body's over anticipating that impact I'm going to feel from the bow upon firing, I will repeat that a couple of times, and it kind of helps settle me out again. Give it a try. So the last tip is shoot often and shoot with a goal. So don't just come out and aim at one dot and just drill that dot over and over and over. Try to develop a pattern or your own personalized version of how you're going to train that day. Don't overshoot your training. So don't say like, oh, I'm going to shoot 100 shots a day. Because if you have a busy day, you're not going to be able to shoot 100 shots a day. There's just other stuff in life. Do something realistic like 10, 15, 20, 25 shots. Don't set the bar too high for yourself so that you kind of end up disappointing yourself. Set it at a very reasonable level so that you can maintain, because shooting daily is what causes the improvements. You're not just going to shoot 200 arrows one day and become Robin Hood, right? It takes months, it takes years. But yeah, I hope at least a couple of those tips were helpful to you. And always remember, live what you love.